Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Exceedingly Abundantly. And I am your host, Joanne McDermott. So today I am doing a recording again because it's May. It's the month of many graduations, and I do have a graduation to attend. So I had to do this earlier for you today, and I wanted to make sure that we did not miss a single episode. So I'm bringing this here to you, and I hope you enjoy it. And we will just go right ahead and get started. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, there we go. All right. Welcome to Exceedingly Abundantly. And you should be able to still see me in the corner there. And that's kind of nice because that way I can be talking to you and looking at you at the same time where you can see my face. So again, welcome to Exceedingly Abundantly. And this takes place every second and fourth Saturday of the month. Here we are, the fourth Saturday of the month. We are practically at the end of May this weekend coming up. We're going to be experiencing our Memorial Day weekend. I wish you all a happy, restful Memorial Day weekend. Congratulations to all the students that have completed another year. Job well done. I know those last 2 weeks, that last week is just so stressful because there's all these finals, but yay, you did it. You hung in there and it was worth the pain, right? So congratulations to you all. But let's finish up our month with a bang. So my name is Joanne McDermott, and I am a board certified functional nutrition counselor and a mental health coach. Functional nutrition, functional medicine, we go right to the root cause of uh, finding out what's causing this health challenges, whether it's mental, physical, even spiritual that you're experiencing. Why not? Let's go to the root cause and get it cleared out once and for all. That's what I do. That's what I specialize in. And I'm here to help you. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I do give free consultations. So I have to throw out my disclaimer here. The information that I provide is intended to promote overall well-being, and it is not a substitute for personalized professional care. So if you are seeing a doctor, a health practitioner, you want to continue seeing them. In fact, if you learn whatever you learn here, bring it to your practitioner and discuss it with them. Let them know what it is that you want to do or not do or change. Keep them, in the knowledge of what you're doing and what's going on with you and even what you're thinking about. And hopefully they will be open. They should be open to hear what you have to say. Viewers are encouraged to be empowered by learning how the body functions, allowing them to take an active role in their own health goals and decisions. You know what? You should be in control of how your healthcare should be, how your healthcare should go, what your health plans are, because after all, you know your body better than anyone else. So, my little disclaimer there for you. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, for the month of May, we've been talking about emotions, right? Particularly that anxiety and depression. Those are the emotions that we struggle with, when it comes to illness, or mental illness. Those are the most common ones. There's trauma, but then even within that trauma brings the anxiety and the depression. So anxiety and depression, that's kind of like the basis of all, the mental illnesses, that we deal with. So last week I went into just looking at the definition of emotion. What is an emotion? It's a natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships of others. So, as a result of our environment, our circumstances, the way in which we're dealing with other people, out of all of that, brings up our emotions, brings up the way we feel, and it's instinctive. We don't stop to think about, oh, I want to be happy, oh, I want to be sad, oh, I want to be frustrated. It just kind of happens. And that's what our emotions are. And then we talked a little bit about the different types of emotions. Well, they basically are broken down into two categories: your positive emotions and your negative emotions. So, positive emotions like happiness, and then your negative emotions like sadness, depression, anxiety, things like that. So, we also talked about how kind of just looking at the physical body, um, we're really comprised of the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. So looking at from the physical perspective, sometimes we get sick, right? And usually after a while, we've been sick for a little bit, we rest, we drink our water, we try to do those things, eat right, and eventually we get better. Sometimes we don't get better. That's when we have to start being concerned and need to check into things a little bit deeper. Sometimes we have these physical symptoms for no reason at all. They're physical symptoms that are concerning. These are experiences, symptoms, signs that we're having, and it shouldn't be happening. We took the example of a person losing weight. Why am I losing weight? I'm not on a diet. That's a time when we should be concerned as well. Now let's look at the mental perspective, the mental side of us. Sometimes we get sad, rightly so. So we have a loved one that was very close to us. They passed away. Yeah, that makes us sad. But it's when that sadness is just lingering. It's very strong and it's lingering and it's not going away the way it should, and it's lasting a long time. That's when we start to get concerned. And that's when it's good to consider seeking some help. And then sometimes we feel sad or anxious and for no reason at all. Why is that happening? That is also a time when we should be thinking about what's going on here, and it may be necessary to go and seek some help or some assistance, right? To find out what is really going on here, because this is not normal for it to be continuing, or it's not normal for me to be feeling this sad or this anxiety for no reason at all. So I ended last week with talking about, well, why do we have these emotions, feeling sad, feeling anxious, for no reason at all, or why is it not going away? And I ended off by saying, well, one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons, is because of a hormone imbalance. We have so many hormones that are being secreted throughout our bodies every single day and just constantly, all throughout the day. Um, some of those hormones are released as a means to allow some kind of metabolism to take place. So, for example, we eat our food, and even as we're getting hungry and we smell the food, there are gastric juices that are released, into our stomach to help to break down that food. So that would be more of like a metabolic, type of reaction, hormones being released and producing some kind of a metabolic, result, effect. But sometimes there's also hormones that get released, and it makes us feel a certain way. It affects our moods. And those hormones that are specifically related to your mood, whether you're feeling happy, sad, anxious, that those type of hormones are called neurotransmitters, because neuro meaning brain. So it's happening in your mind, in your brain, and affecting the way you feel. And also will result in the way that you act or you respond. So different type of hormones, as I mentioned, there's the neurotransmitters. Examples of that is the serotonin and the GABA and the dopamine. You have your hunger hormones that tell you when you're hungry, when you're full. That's your ghrelin and your leptin. Got your reproductive hormones, and then your energy hormones. These are hormones that are released that give you the energy to deal with whatever it is that you have to deal with. The task at hand, or the stressful situation that you're suddenly involved in. But we're going to be focusing more on. I'm going to be going more referring more to the neurotransmitters, because that's what we're talking about, emotions. And our emotions, it kind of starts in the mind here, because we're thinking about the way we feel, or we feel a certain way, and then that makes us think a certain way. Neurotransmitters are examples of that. Go back to that again, is like serotonin. Serotonin is that happy hormone. It makes us feel happy. It makes us feel calm. GABA makes us feel calm. Everything's okay. We're relaxed. Dopamine makes us feel like we are experiencing serendipity, everything. So this is wonderful. And man, I want to experience this again. Dopamine is also known as our reward hormone. So how do we balance these hormones? How do we get them so that we are producing enough serotonin and enough GABA and the right dopamine? Because you see, when there's an imbalance, we're not producing enough serotonin, which means we're not going to be happy. We're going to be experiencing more anxiety and sadness. When we're not producing enough GABA, we're going to be experiencing less calm, which means we're going to be more stressed or anxious. So how do we get these hormones to be balanced the way they're supposed to? What are the different things that we can do? What do we resort to? Well, for one, we might go to our doctor, right? And we will talk to the doctor and tell him how we're feeling. The doctor might determine, okay, it sounds like you might be experiencing a little bit of depression here, a little bit of anxiety. Sometimes that can get a little bit mixed up, or a little bit, not really dealing with the surface of what's going on. I mean, it could be a situation that's causing you to be depressed or anxious. So it may really require getting some kind of counseling. But, if you are going to the doctor and you are telling him, hey, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and I don't even know why, then that's when, a doctor might question, whether, I wonder if you're just experiencing some anxiety or depression. But anyway, really at the end of the day, it's really good to try to understand what might be going on in your life that's causing you to feel that way. But anyway, our doctors sometimes, they determine that, all right, you know what? I'm going to give you a prescription and see if this can help you to feel better. Now, prescription medication, it can help to balance those hormones, that serotonin and GABA that I was talking to you about. They work, they help, they're helpful. But sometimes people don't like the side effects or the way they feel afterwards. And they would be open, to learning some, other ways or alternatives. So I'm going to be sharing with you, different things, that people do to help to balance those hormones. So one of them is to get a prescription, from the doctor. Another one is what I call self-medicate. Sometimes we self-medicate ourselves. I don't feel good. I don't want to continue feeling this way. I need to do something. That's what your mind is thinking. And it's normal to be thinking that way. That's your body is always looking to survive. Your body is always looking to strive for balance. We call that homeostasis. We also call it allostasis. So what are the different things that people use to self-medicate? Well, they might have some prescription drugs that they have in their cabinet that was used from before, maybe a month ago, a year ago, they were prescribed that medication and they decide, you know what, let me try this again. Some people might use alcohol, to self-medicate. Alcohol is a sedative. They call that a sedative, meaning it just relaxes you, and it does change the way your thinking is, because people tend to be a little bit more bold, after they drink, some alcohol there. So it does kind of calm you. It makes you feel like, oh, it's okay. You can go ahead and do it. Or, there's some kind of a calming effect there. People are feeling anxious. They want to feel calm. Okay, let me go take this alcohol because I don't want to feel this way anymore. Some people resort to drugs. You can see the needle there. And unfortunately, some people resort to street drugs and, those drugs that can be very addictive. And some people even resort to marijuana. In some states, marijuana has become legalized. It also helps to calm and help the person from escaping from those feelings of just overwhelm and anxiety. Yeah, we do that. We self-medicate. That's another route, that we take, some people might take to help them to feel better, to help to balance those hormones, to help that the serotonin levels go up instead of being so far down. The thing about these medications, whether it's prescription medications or things that you take to self-medicate that I just mentioned before, anything that we take in that changes our moods. Yeah. Another self-medication could be food, eating that chocolate, eating that sugar. It does make us feel a little bit better. But what we have to be careful about is any type of self-medication, any type of medication, or those things that we resort to. Anything that changes our mood also puts us at risk of becoming addictive to those items. So we can become addicted to the sugar. We can become addicted to the to the substances, the marijuana, even the prescription medication that the doctors are giving you. So that's kind of a scary thing. We don't want to become addicted to these um, substances, because we could end up taking too much, and they do tend to have their side effects, and it starts to take a toll on the body after a while. So what else? What else can you do? What else can we do where we can be balancing these hormones? Well, I would like to share with you another option. This is a more natural way, and it is not addictive, and it is also not having any side effects. Do you want to know what that is? All right, let me continue. There is something here called the 8 laws of health. They're the laws of health, like the laws of gravity. The law of gravity, what comes up must come down. It just happens. It's a law. You can't change it. You can't alter it. It's just when you do A, B happens. When you do X, Y happens. So there's these 8 laws of health. And if you follow these 8 laws of health, if you follow these laws, then you are going to experience health. You will by default, because they are the laws of health. Just like what comes up, what comes down, when you do these, when you incorporate these into your life, you will experience this health. I used an acronym here to help remember, what those 8 laws of health are. The acronym is New Start. So the N being for nutrition, followed by exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust, or trust in God. Let's take a closer look at what all of these are. So starting with nutrition, eating a good balanced diet, eating good nutrition is going to really is going to help you to be healthy overall, going to allow you to experience overall health, including a good balance of your hormones. But what I did is I took out those foods. All right, let me back up a little bit. So, a good balanced diet is going to be eating your fruits, your vegetables, your nuts, and your legumes. So, your legumes, there we go, legumes. So, your legumes are going to be your protein. So, legumes are specifically your beans, your garbanzo beans, black beans, pinto beans. So, if in every meal you have fruits, veggies, nuts, and legumes, you can eat a complete balanced diet. I'm not going to go into detail on what that looks like. I believe, next month I'll be diving deeper into nutrition. So, but I'm going to be talking to you right now on those nutritional foods that specifically deal with helping to balance, your hormones. So I have on the screen here a picture of yogurt. That's actually a bowl of yogurt. And I also have a bowl there of sauerkraut. Now, I put those on there because there's something called a gut-brain axis. So whatever is happening in the brain is also going to happen in the gut. And whatever is happening in the gut is going to happen in the brain. So if you have a healthy brain, you'll have a healthy gut. If you have a healthy gut, you'll have a healthy brain. The two are connected together. They're connected by a long nerve called the vagus nerve. So if you really want to have the brain functioning optimally, the neurotransmitters being released, being produced and released so that you can have that serotonin and you can have that GABA. We really want to make sure that we have a healthy gut. It's going to help it a lot. So how do we build a good, healthy gut? We want to ensure that there's a good balance of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, because there's both in there. We always want to have more of the good, not as much as the bad. And helping to maintain that balance is to be eating those foods that are high in probiotics, right? Probiotics. So a good high probiotic food is yogurt, right? Because it has that bacteria in it. It helps to replenish the good bacteria. And then sauerkraut is really good too, because it just helps to build the integrity of the lining of the stomach, and the intestines as well. So it just helps to make that whole gut healthy. That's what we want. And then I have something on the picture here called our resistant starches. So any types of food that's considered a resistant starch, which you see on the screen there, green bananas or potatoes, especially when the potatoes are cooled, like a potato salad, it helps to it actually produces or helps to put bacteria in the colon, in the large intestines, and the bacteria that's there, they feed on the bacteria that is, or it ends up being food for the bacteria in the colon. So it nourishes that good bacteria, and again, helping to keep that balance, within the gut, the microbiota, they call it. And when, again, it's helping to build the integrity and the health of the colon, of the gut. And like I said before, a healthy gut is going to create that healthy mind, and you're going to be able to produce those neurotransmitters, the way you want it to, and just to be able to have healthy emotions. I also have here a picture of the good fats. Fats are important because the brain is like 60% fat. It really utilizes a lot of fat, and we want to, sometimes we hear about eating a low-fat diet, but we need fat. We don't want to eliminate all the fat. The trick is, or the idea is, to make sure that we are eating the healthy fats. So that's going to be like your coconut, your olive oil, your avocado. So we want to really make sure that we're incorporating that in our diet. And then, of course, we want to really, really keep that sugar down. And if you notice here, I said, I didn't just say no sugar. Notice that it doesn't say no sugar, but it says no added sugars. So there are foods that naturally have sugar in it. What would that be? It would be our fruits. It's okay. That sugar is okay. Our body actually uses sugar to make energy, to make us so that we're alert, thinking, and we can move around. But it's the added sugar. That's when those cakes and desserts where they're just piling those sugars, adding a lot of sugar, to create that sweet donut or brownie. That's when we want to be careful about that. And better for us to stay away from that, added sugar. Too much sugar also can lead to inflammation. Can also lead to inflammation inside the mind and the brain, not the mind, but the brain here. And that is going to make it not work optimally and also result in the imbalanced hormones, not secreting that serotonin, GABA. We want that serotonin and GABA to be released because that is what's going to make us happy instead of sad. All right, let's move right on. So there is also, the next one is exercise. Yes, exercise. All right, nutrition and then exercise. Exercise releases endorphins. What are endorphins? Endorphins is another hormone, and the way in which we get our bodies to release endorphins is through exercise. And why are endorphins good? Endorphins is actually a natural pain reliever. So, when, you got a headache, you got a pain, at your side or in your stomach, and the doctor might prescribe, Motrin, something like that. Or we might take a Tylenol, an Advil, and our pain goes away. Well, a natural way of helping for pain to go away. And by the way, this is not only physical pain, but it can also be mental, emotional pain as well, is by the releasing of endorphins. And we get that by exercising. It's pretty miraculous, pretty amazing. The physical therapist, they use something called a TENS unit. When a person is having pain, in their knee or in their back, they put this TENS unit on them. And that TENS unit, it kind of, it does a couple of things. It stops the traveling of the impulse, through the nerve, kind of blocks it so that the person is not feeling that pain. But it also releases endorphins. So something about, just the way it works with the nervous system there, it will help to release endorphins. And then the person is no longer experiencing the pain, or they might be experiencing it a lot less. So exercise is very good for also helping to balance those hormones, getting more of the good, less of the bad. In this case, when it comes to exercise, and specifically endorphins. All right, let's continue. Water. Water is very good for us, as you know. Are you drinking your water? It's supposed to be half of our body weight in ounces. But if you're not used to drinking a whole lot of water, I would recommend that you just start slow and low, right? Because when you start slow and low, you'll keep at it. When you do too much all at once, you'll be really motivated in the beginning, and then you'll just really fall off the bandwagon and not really want to get back on because it's too hard. So really just start slow and low. But yes, try to get that water in every single day. So water, our body is mainly composed of water. our blood. Our blood is liquid. Those hormones that get secreted is liquid, and the water is like the base and is needed for these hormones to be secreted for us to have good blood circulation so that our blood is not thick. Water does so many things, but when it comes to our emotions and, you know, um, what the water does more than anything is, let me see. Well, it says here the brain uses water to manufacture the hormones and the neurotransmitters. So, because it's all a liquid. So if you're not having enough liquid there to be able to make that thing, which is a liquid base, it's going to be hard for those hormones to be produced and made. But water also is a means of just removing toxins out of our body, right? Because when we sweat, it's water that's coming out of us, but it's the toxins in the form of water that's coming out. Also, when we urinate, our body is releasing waste that it does not need, and we're better off without it. And even our bowel movements, if we are not drinking enough water, we are not going to be regular in our bowels. So the water is just helping to get rid of those toxins. Why is our body trying to get rid of toxins? Because those toxins are not good for us. They're not healthy for us. And if they remain in us, what's going to happen? We're going to get sick. How do we feel when we're sick? We don't feel good. Are we feeling happy? No, we're feeling miserable. We're feeling sad. We maybe might even be feeling anxious. So just to be able to have that overall healthy feeling, we want to remove those toxins. And that's going to happen by us drinking plenty of water, right? Just remember the last time you felt sick. I mean, your resilience level of resilience is lower. You're probably going to be more easily irritated. So that's a negative emotion there. So we want to do everything we can to help encourage that good body, healthy body, because that's going to increase our tolerance level and resilience level. Okay, let's move right along. All right, sunlight. Sunlight releases serotonin. Remember serotonin, that's one of the neurotransmitters. That is our happy hormones. We want to try to increase that serotonin as much as possible. Another way in which you can increase that serotonin is by getting sunlight. So, how very important it is when you wake up in the morning and what you want to do, especially that first morning sunshine, you want to make sure that you're just sitting in there and basking in that sun and let that light hit your eyes or your eyelids, right? You don't have to look directly at the sun, but just for your eyes to have that contact with the light. The light goes in through your eyes, and then what it does is it produces serotonin. Just the light does that. Another amazing miracle. It's going to make you feel happier. And then later on in the evening, when the sun starts to go down, your body is going to produce melatonin, right? So it's going to be less serotonin, more melatonin. But you see, that melatonin wouldn't even be produced in the first place if there wasn't enough serotonin that you have gotten in the morning. And then when you sleep better, that also helps maintain that balance, within our hormones, specifically our neurotransmitters. We're going to talk about rest a little bit down the line there. But anyway, you want to ensure that you are getting a lot of sunlight. So open up the shades, let the sun come in. I don't know if where you work, it's kind of dark. You want to be able to just kind of, take a lunch break. When you take your lunch break and you eat, go outside and take a walk, walk off some of that food you ate so you don't get sleepy afterwards, but also get in that sunlight. That is going to boost your mood. That is going to balance your hormone levels. Okay, what about temperance? What is temperance? Temperance is the moderation or self-control in an action and thought or feeling. Temperance is something that is important too, when it comes to, just thinking about balancing our hormones, because what happens when we don't have temperance? So remember, temperance is kind of like self-control. What happens when we don't have self-control? Are we happy or are we miserable? So I want you to just imagine like a bad habit or an addiction. Let's think of specifically addiction. Um, let's say that you just love that chocolate, you love that sugar, and you find yourself just resorting a lot to eating that candy. And I mean, at the time, it makes you feel better. But then after you eat that candy, or even taking the drug, um, after some time goes by, you don't feel very good anymore, right? So you kind of go really high. Oh, this is wonderful. And then you just go really low. And then because you're so low again, you can't stand the way you feel. I need some relief. You go back to the sugar, you go back to the drug, and it's just kind of this up and down. So I want you to think about, you know, that person that gets addicted, um, to that thing that they're using to try to escape. Do they feel happy about this addiction that they have? Do they feel happy about the fact that they can't control? Do they want to sometimes want to stop, but they can't? And how do they feel about that? Do they feel happy about that? It brings on anxiety. They know that they shouldn't do this. They know this is not good. They know that they should stop. Sometimes it gets so bad that people start to choose that addiction. Well, it's not, it's more than choose, but people find that that addiction is controlling their lives to the point where they lose their jobs, they lose their family, they lose close relationships. Life just is getting worse. It's just going downhill. Who wants their life to go downhill? They realize that this addiction has actually taken over their lives. They don't have that control anymore. They don't have temperance. This is how having temperance, exercising temperance, is also going to help to balance our hormones, because it causes us to make poor choices, poor decisions, take care of ourselves poorly. And so we are not, you know, eating the right foods, putting the right nutrients in our bodies. And, that's going to cause the hormones to be imbalanced. We were talking about nutrition at as one of the first health law. But the thing I want to also point out is sometimes we can't help it. That's why an addiction is called an addiction, because we can't stop ourselves. We can't change it. That item has taken control. So I would like to say to any of you out there, I'm not saying that, okay, you just need to have control, because it's a process. It's a journey. There's a way to go about doing it. And just for someone to say to you, hey, you need to have control, that doesn't always fix it, because if it was that easy, people would have done it a long time ago. We wouldn't have people having to go into rehabs, all the time. So, I want to be sympathetic and empathetic towards that. If any of you are struggling with something, I know and I understand that it is difficult. And I would like to encourage you to go and seek some help. And you don't have to go that journey alone. And you can have someone, you can work with someone, or a program to help you to get past where you are, and helping you to overcome that addiction, so that you can be in control and you don't have to have that thing controlling you, right? Another law of health is what they call air. I like to call it your deep breathing. It's important for our bodies to be getting enough air or enough oxygen and to be doing that deep breathing and not shallow breathing. We tend to breathe shallow, and the times that really help to encourage us to to breathe deeply is when we're exercising, right? You're running and oh man, our body just demands more oxygen because the oxygen actually gives us energy and it helps us to be able to continue to be physically active. But deep breathing, it helps us to be calm. It helps us to go from what they call the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. I explain that in another, episode that I do, but I'll just tell you quickly that sympathetic nervous system is our fight and flight. That's when we are experiencing some kind of threat, and our body just kind of goes into instinct mode or impulse mode. We're not even really thinking clearly. We're just, okay, I need to do this and I need to do this now. We're tense. Your blood pressure tends to be higher. But when we get into the parasympathetic nervous system, it's the exact opposite. It's rest and digest. It's when we're calm, we're not anxious, we're not nervous, and we are experiencing, those positive emotions. So there's an exercise that is recommended, when a person is feeling anxious, and it's just breathing. Focusing on our breathing, you inhale, hold it for so many seconds, and then you exhale. And you're just doing that over and over again. When we do that, it helps to stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. It helps us to be calm just by doing that breathing. Just that exercise in and of itself brings us to that calm, that parasympathetic nervous system. But also, when we are just focusing on our breathing, so in other words, okay, I'm inhaling, I'm holding that for 4 seconds. Okay, now I'm exhaling, but I'm doing it just in the right speed so that by the time I've exhaled all of the oxygen, all of the breath, I would have done that over a period of 8 seconds. So we're thinking about that and we're counting. And so what that also does is it gets our minds to be thinking about what we're doing at the time, which is the breathing, and gets our minds away from other thoughts like, how anxious we feel, or whatever it is that we might be worrying about or frustrated about. So it's changing the way our focus, where we're putting our focus. And so if we're not focusing on that frustrating incident or that scary or that anxiety, then it's going to help us to be calm again. So deep breathing, doing that breath work, getting that air, the oxygen inside of our bodies also helps with the balancing, of those hormones. And so that we are experiencing more of the positive emotions or the releasing of those hormones that result in the more positive emotions. Then we have rest. So, rest is just making sure that we are getting enough sleep. One of the ways in which we can ensure that we're getting enough sleep is making sure that when we go to bed, we are getting those, 8 to 10 hours. I've seen 8 to 10, 7 to 9, let's just say about 8 hours of sleep every night, uninterrupted. Well, sometimes we have to get up and go to the bathroom, but we should be falling back asleep right away. And also making sure that we're not going to bed too late. So 10 is really a good cutoff. Definitely before 12 midnight. Now, when we are sleeping at night, there is a hormone that gets secreted during the day. It's called cortisol, and that is what gives us the strength and the motivation and the umph, to be able to just tackle the day and take care of all these whatever challenges come our way. That cortisol is up. But then as the day progresses and evening comes, then that cortisol level starts to go down, down, and down until it's like really at its low. But our body at that point is preparing for sleep, and it needs to sleep. It needs to rest because, while we're sleeping and resting at night, our bodies are repairing. So sometimes this cortisol level doesn't get to go down the way it's supposed to, especially if we're staying up late at night. It goes down and then it goes back up because it's confused and thinking, oh, wait a second. I thought it was time to go to sleep. It's not, because she's not making, or he's not planning on going to bed. He's on his scrolling on his phone. He's watching a movie. So then these cortisol levels, they go down, they go back up, they go down, they go back up. And, they're not really doing that smooth pattern of just going down, staying down, and then going up, staying up. Now, our adrenal gland, which is kind of looks like a little hat that sits on top of our kidneys. That's our adrenals. And it secretes cortisol. And sometimes if it's secreting cortisol constantly or too much or more than it should, it starts to get fatigued. And so they call that adrenal fatigue. So what happens when something is just tired? It's just worn out. Think about a car. You've driven it and driven it and driven it and driven it to the ground, and eventually it conks out. It's just like, okay, I had enough. I can't do anymore. And it just kind of stops functioning, right? That can happen to our adrenal gland sometimes. They call that adrenal fatigue. And so now it's not producing that cortisol. And so what happens is you get some of these symptoms that's listed here, one of which is depression, anxiety, irritability, definitely the low energy. And it's just because the adrenal glands are so fatigued because they didn't have that chance to rest the way they're supposed to. And so it cannot release the cortisol. And when it's not releasing that cortisol, you're going to have these symptoms. Like I just mentioned, the depression and the anxiety and the irritability. And again, another example of the imbalanced hormones levels. This hormone in this case is that cortisol. We want to get that good rest because that rest is going to help those hormones to be balanced, like we've been talking about. All right, and then the last law of health is called trust in God, or trust. A lot of these health and wellness videos out there, or podcasts, they talk about something called the inner child. And I believe it's the inner child versus the mature adult that is playing in our minds. They talk about, and that inner child is telling you, I want to do this and I want to do that. And they're kind of throwing a temper tantrum. And the things that they want to do are the things that's not good and healthy for them. But, they don't care. They want to do it. And that's why they call it that inner child. So it's like we have this voice telling us the things that we want to do, even though we know that it's not good for us. And then we have another voice, they call it the mature adult. No, that's not good for you. You shouldn't do that. You really need to try to behave yourself or try to find better alternatives. And so there's like these two voices that's just going on inside our minds all the time. I've also heard of people refer to the universe, and the universe told me this, and the universe made this happen, and the universe brought this to me. Well, I believe that there are two voices, that goes on in our minds and our heads. I call it the great controversy between good and evil. So there is that good side, what some people refer to as the inner child, and then there is that evil side with what some people might refer to as the mature adult. It's interesting, but we all have that. We all have those two voices that are going on in our heads, whether it's telling us Okay, you already had one. You shouldn't eat anymore. You know what? You shouldn't eat that. You know what? You shouldn't take that drug. You shouldn't take that alcohol. You know what? You had enough. Don't take anymore. Or even things like, you know what? You really should go for a walk. You know what? You really should say sorry to that person. You know, there's that voice inside all of us that that encouraged is kind of encouraging us, or coaching us to the better choice, the better decision. But then there's that other voice inside of us that's is saying, I don't care, but I don't want it, but I don't care because I was angry, but I don't care. They shouldn't have done that, right? We all have those two voices going on inside of us all the time, and we have different names for it. But I would like to refer to you to a quote in the Bible, and it's from the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12. And it says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers of darkness, against spiritual hosts of weakness. So what is that saying? Let's go back and look at it again. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So what's flesh and blood? That would be like the people. The wrestling that we have is not against the people. We're not really fighting against ourselves. We're not really fighting with our spouses, our bosses. We're not really fighting. We'll have disagreements, and we will um, have opposing opinions with each other, but the fight is really not with each other. The fight is against the rulers of darkness. That would be the evil. And between, the heavenly host. So it's between the good, the heavenly host, and the rulers of darkness, the evil, or the host of wickedness. And that's who we're really fighting. We're not fighting people. Oops, I'm sorry about that. We're not fighting people. We are fighting against the spirit of good and evil that's out there. It really boils down to, we are fighting against the good would be God, and the evil would be the enemy, or Satan. Satan is the one that puts those ideas, those thoughts in our heads. Where are they coming from? They have to be coming from somewhere. They're coming from Satan. And then those mature thoughts that come into your mind, the right thing to do, where is it coming from? It has to be coming from somewhere. It's coming from God, the Holy Spirit that's speaking to you, and it's in all of us, because we all go through that. I know I should do this, but I don't want to do this. We all have that inside of us. So isn't it nice, though, to be able to know that we can depend on something else bigger and greater than ourselves to help us to make the right choices, to help us to get over the addiction, to help us to heal, to be healed and to feel better. Because sometimes it's hard for us to do it on our own. And more than anything, we need the support, right? We need the support. Sometimes, no man is an island, as they say. We need something to be able to help carry us along the way. And that's why having that trust, or having that trust in God, that really helps to take away a lot of the anxiety. Because you see, when we have that anxiety, we're feeling like we need to do it ourselves, because if I don't do it, nobody's going to do it. But isn't it nice to know that you have that support? You have that comfort of knowing that, I'm going to get some help here. What I would like to invite you to put your trust in God and know that you don't have to do it alone. Throughout this presentation here, I have been suggesting, or I've been mentioning, go get some help. It's okay to get help. It's okay to reach out. It's a good thing to get support, and because we can't always do things on our own. You know, there is a saying that says, in a sinking boat, there's no such thing as atheist. What happens? What are we all doing? What's everybody doing? They're praying, Lord, please help us. You know, when the situation becomes desperate, we are looking for help somewhere, and that's okay. I would like to encourage you, go get help. And one of the best places to get help is from God, because He loves you and He wants to help you more than anything. He calls you your child. Think about how much you love your own children or a child in your life, a niece, a nephew, a cousin that you love, cherish, and you want to help and you want to protect so much. Well, thank you for joining me here. And one more thing, we went through the laws of health, but the last thing I wanted to mention too is something called neuroplasticity. This is also, this is an exercise, something that we can do also to help balance those hormones, or in other words, to get those more of the good hormones in there, or to help to produce more of the positive emotions. So there's something called neuroplasticity, and that basically is, well, it says there, it's the brain's secret superpower. So that is basically when we are developing good habits. We might have a habit of thinking the worst all the time. And it's just a matter of changing the way we think and creating a new path in our brain to help us to naturally resort more, to that tendency, which in this case, thinking more positive instead of the other tendency, which is, thinking negatively. So sometimes it's just an exercise that we do with our brain. Anything that we do, whenever we create a habit, that habit forms because we've done it over and over and over again. Habits that we create is not only something that we do physically, so maybe driving a certain path, a certain route when we're going to work, we just kind of do it out of habit. We don't even have to think about it anymore. That's what makes it a habit. Just do it automatically. You don't have to stop and think and process, okay, do I turn here? Do I turn there? But also habits that are not only something that we do physically. So like another example is learning how to play a song. In the beginning, you got to look at the keys, you got to look at the notes, the music, and you're just kind of going back and forth to help you to get through that song. But after a while, you can play that song and you don't even have to look at your fingers anymore. You might not even need to look at the notes because it's become a habit. You have developed a pathway in your brain to help you to be able to play that song without even really thinking about it anymore. Well, the habits that we formed aren't only physical, but we can form habits in the way we think, in our minds. And you might have a habit, or somebody might have a habit to just always think on the negative. And every time they get up in the morning, they just are instantly thinking about the negative. Oh, it's so hot. Oh, I didn't sleep good last night. Oh, I got to go to work. And that can become a habit, our thoughts. So what we want to do is to try to start creating a new pathway. And it can be something like, all right, you know what? From now on, when I first get up in the morning, I am going to think of something positive, right? I'm going to think about, oh man, I'm glad I had a bed to sleep in last night. I didn't have to sleep outside. And they're just going to continue to try to think of another good habit, and another good habit. Sometimes it's called like attitude of gratitude. And they're going to try to form that new pathway. So, they're going to have that tendency to think the negative because it's a habit. But what they would do is they would catch themselves and, okay, wait, no. All right, let me stop dwelling on that thought. Let me go think about something good. that I experienced today, or that I experienced last night, or that I can be grateful for. And if they continue to do that again and again, it's not going to be easy in the beginning. You're going to resort to the old habits. But if they just keep trying and they keep trying and they keep working at it, it's creating a new pathway in their brain. And eventually they're going to form that new habit. The old habit starts to die because they're not feeding into it anymore. And eventually it does die. And then the new good habit, it just flourishes. Just like learning how to play that song. It was hard in the beginning, but you keep at it, you keep at it, you keep at it, and then it becomes more natural. So that's what we call neuroplasticity. That is also a means, a way to be able to um, encourage our minds to be experiencing more of the positive emotions and not having as much anxiety. And it's a little bit hard in the beginning, to incorporate, to implement and to do, but it does work. Again, I encourage you, go out there and get the support, get someone to help, to guide you, to lead you, to support you, to hold you accountable. I'll be glad to be able to help you with that. Or if you have more questions about that, again, you can go to my website and you can do a free consultation. Let's chat more privately. I'd love to be able to hear from you. Well, thanks again for this opportunity to be with you. And want to remind you, Exceedingly Abundantly, we meet the second and fourth Saturday of the month. And that is my website, journeytoabundantwellness.com. Check me out, visit me, see a little bit more of what I do. Go to the schedule a free consultation. And until we meet next time, we will be meeting again in the month of June. I want to wish you all a happy summer. Again, congrats to all those that are graduated. And looking forward to next month when we have a new topic to talk about. Every month, a new topic. Take care and stay well. Bye.